pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, guys. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Des Moines County Supervisors Meeting. This is May 16th, 2023. Do we have any changes to the tentative agenda? I do not.
Okay.
Meet with department heads, elected officials. Krista Pogemiller, Health Department.
Good morning. We're just keeping busy, nothing new to report.
We appreciate you keeping busy. Let's do Rodney Bleasner, maintenance.
Good morning, keeping busy. The project at the jail, they started working again this morning. Weather kind of put them off on Friday and yesterday, so they're back at it. They kind of got the, let's see, would be the southwest section of the top, the one side done, so we still got another couple weeks worth of work, but it's coming along. The weather's kind of hampered some of that progress, but they're doing a good job. Things are moving right along. So, other than that, that's all I have this time. Thank you.
Thank you. And your wife did a fantastic job the other day. We didn't get one out of you, but we got one from your better half. Appreciate that. Let's move on to Natalie Steffner, Recorder's Office.
Good morning, just a little update on the digitizing process. US Imaging is done with their third and final stage. So that would be all of our mortgages from 82 to 95. So I'm just in contact with Tyler, who does our Eagle Recorder, to get those uploaded. Not sure what kind of process that is or how long that'll take, but stuff's moving along with that. Otherwise, just business as usual.
Natalie, some of that stuff get digitalized back in the 1800s.
That's what we're working on too. Yep.
That's great. History.
Go back to like 1854, I think is what our deed books go back to, so. Hopefully the images are the images will be viewable, but obviously they're kind of faded and everything in the book, so we can preserve the books to be able to view the image. Just make it easier for those and put them out online for people to view.
Yeah, I'm just gonna check if Keith Richards had any deeds back there.
Always comes.
Still alive.
Got it.
Oh, yeah. Well, it was all. They call, his middle name is the Cat, because he's got 9 of them. All right. The Attorney's Office, Trent Hinkleton.
So, business as usual a lot. Lisa's, I don't know if she's in jury today or if she's in prep and it starts tomorrow. I didn't see very many cars out there. But I tell you, this would be a plug for, if anybody got a chance to go up there today or tomorrow, it'd definitely be a plug for Ring doorbells. Because this is one that will be, I mean, none of them are easy, but this is one where there's a lot of things that people will be able to see. So, I mean, they have good video. But business as usual.
Thank you, sir. Chris Lee, Conservation.
Just enjoying the spring, looking forward to the river going down. I see it's heading in the right direction at least, so that's good. Doing some spring cleaning up at our shop. We got some things we're putting on gov deals today. Probably throughout this week, so if anybody wants to buy some old stuff from Conservation Department, there'll be some stuff available. That's about it.
All righty then. Is that you, Bob? Okay, land use, we've got Zach James and Jared Lassiter. Who wants to talk?
I can just talk here real quick. Not a whole lot of new stuff going on. We've got a subdivision on the agenda today. We've got a work session afterwards too on wind and solar ordinance, and then just kind of some business as usual. A few other outstanding things with subdivision and floodplain development, zoning permits, those things. So, just curious if you got something specific to add.
Not really.
All righty then. Colin Gerst, IT.
Just keeping busy like always. Nothing really good to report.
Sheriff Kevin Glendale.
Good morning.
got several things going on. We had crime commission out of the jail this morning. We're doing some fire evacuation training, just how to handle fires and inmates and how to respond in those situations. We got doing a GTSB grant audit today, but we got word that we got more than we had in the years past. We used to get about $10,000 in those grant dollars, and now we're up to about $20,000. That money goes towards in-car camera system, radar, and then a bulk of it is actually just for extra salary for deputies to do extra patrol. The Governor Traffic Safety Bureau grant dollars, so.
You
We
get
got-
that, or you qualified for that?
We got $20,000.
All right.
The years prior, it's been 10,000. Last year, we got up to 17, and this year we got 20,000, so.
That's state or federal?
That's state money.
State.
We had our Top Gun shoot last week, and that's a friendly competition of local law enforcement. Pretty proud that our department won the team competition. One of our deputies, Sergeant Dave Hama, he won the overall competition, so it's just kind of a neat competition that
Who won that last time?
Brad Siegfried won the year prior. So both those guys are in their 40s, so it goes to show that it's not just age. They spend some time, and they're pretty good at what they do. So they're consistently up there. So they did quite well in that. Brad got third this year, so he will spend more time on the range. He's committed to it.
You haven't seen our Mr. Broker shoot yet.
If you ever want to participate in that, come on up. Let's see, we have our consultant from True North. He's going to be in town this week. I'll be taking him around to some tower sites today, and then he'll be visiting a lot of agencies. This is reference to our radio communications and just kind of helping us find the right path forward for the future and where our radio communications should go in Des Moines County. So he'll be in town all this week, and he'll be visiting agencies and the tower sites. And then out of the jail, we have, let me jump back, we had DT yesterday morning and yesterday afternoon, so we're doing that quarterly now. That's defensive tactics, sorry. Where we're doing 2-hour sessions, so we use the Burlington PD's basement. They've got some mats set up in the basement that they let us use, and it goes really well. We get our deputies in there and we go over defensive tactics, and what it really helps us is less use of force incidents. It teaches us how to control safely as opposed to use of force that we try to avoid. So it's really helpful, gets them that experience, that real life experience in on the mats.
Are you guys using like tackling dummies or people?
We use each other.
Has Jim or Tom ever participated
Who
in
gets
that?
to use you?
So I got challenged quite a bit last time. My pride got me into some situations that I didn't feel good about. Got put on my back by one of our deputies, and I'm not really used to that. So, but it's fun. It's good to get out there and do those things. But yeah, they do like to challenge me, all in good fun. Our jail's at 79 this morning. We have 5 that are waiting for out-of-state extradition. That's a really high number for us. We usually don't. We have maybe 1. But right now, 3 of those we're waiting to be picked up. So they don't have local charges anymore. We're just waiting for those states to come get them. And 2 of those are still pending on local charges. We have 2 that are waiting on residential facility spots that are females, and those will be a couple months. And 4 more were added yesterday after court that are waiting. They're males waiting on spots, and they've been pretty fast on getting us spots for the males at the facility in Burlington. Other than that, we have 1 waiting on prison, so they've been maintaining that list pretty well.
How many got out of county?
7 out of county, 1 juvenile.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you have any information on the vehicle damage that was done at the jail?
Sure. So we had somebody that was incarcerated. He happened to be a homeless person. He was released, and to be quite honest, I just think he wasn't really ready to be released. So he left the jail and went straight out and did some damage to 2 of our transport vehicles. Waited there, and when one of our correctional officers came out and said, didn't initially see the damage, and the guy said, "Aren't you gonna detain me?"
and so we detained him. And so he's been charged with that, unfortunately, and we have about $1,000 worth of damage to two of our squads, $500 each for the windshield.
I've got a thought,
Yes.
KJ, after hearing this. I think we need to put just a little sign up out there, you know, that says, this is county property, and anybody that touches this sign, you know, and make it made out of paper. So that way the damage isn't that strong. We can still send him back home.
Damage
Let him go back with his friends, but it's not so much damage. Well, I consider that.
Yeah,
Yesterday.
that's about all I got.
Well, that sounds like plenty. Bless us, everyone. Sarah Marie, County Auditor.
Good morning. I did send an email out yesterday requesting appointment letters from the department heads. Just trying to get everything wrapped up for the fiscal year to begin and end this one. We'll start changing over insurance information after Friday's payroll. And then our food drive is still going on through the end of May, so if you would like to donate, let me know.
All right.
I do have a question. Rodney, they was gonna put an antenna up there for downtown partners. Did that ever,
They stopped and did like a site review and looked at it. I think everything will work there, but it's one of those deals that they're just doing the site reviews right now, and then they're gonna go out for bid, I guess, on whoever's gonna do the work, so.
okay.
Yeah, they were here and took a look at it, think it'll work, I think we can make it happen up there pretty easily, so. I just haven't heard no more back from them, that's been, I'm sorry, that was probably been a couple weeks ago,
Yeah.
but I haven't heard no more back from
Okay.
them.
I was just kinda curious when Kevin brought up his going out and looking at the towers, and that made me think of it, so,
Yeah, yep, so they've done the initial visit,
thank you.
yep.
You good? Yeah. Brian Carter, County Roads.
Good morning. Finally, I guess, although earlier than we had planned, Bridgeport Road is open last week. We did a press release. I think Jim had some questions, so I think I let all three of you guys know on text also, so if you had anybody asking. So good to have that. I think it turned out very well. It is painted and seeded also. I would think with some of the moisture we had and the temperatures, hopefully that grass will take off good. So, and it will turn around and get used as a detour route. It's not our project, but I do wanna mention that Henry County is getting ready to close X-23, which is south of Lowell, where if you've been through there in the last year roughly, they had to close it last summer, I wanna say. They had a big slide, and they lost a good, I think that road slid maybe 2 or 3 foot vertically. So they've come through, it's gravel, it's been gravel for a while since they got it opened back up. And they're gonna come in and close that and do basically a reconstruction project where that's at. So we did coordinate with Henry County, so I would say a thank you to Henry County, to the engineer. We worked together to, he moved his project back a little bit, I moved my project up a little bit. And that way, we both needed access, direct access to the quarry that we were using, so, and it worked out very well. Ours got done a little early, they're gonna get going a little earlier than they had planned, but, and so just so you know, the detour signs will go up for their project.
How long is their project supposed to take?
I wanna say their press release said 4 months, but I don't.
4 months?
Don't quote me on that. Well, they have all they did was so theirs is they got declared an emergency or a disaster when that happened, which was very good for them, cause their project's a $1-point-some-odd million project. So I think they're completely reconstructing the roadway. I believe they might be doing some slope stabilization and stuff like that. It's a large scale project. And the frustrating thing on slides like that is that you don't ever have a 100% guarantee that everything you're doing is going to work. It's all very much based on engineering and best practices and stuff like that, but their big problem is, I believe, the skunk. If you ever look at that area on an overall aerial, the skunk runs down below that whole thing, and it's hard to, if a river, once it starts sliding down the middle of a river, it's awfully hard to battle that, so. So yeah, I don't know what their exact plans are, but I believe 4 months was what was on their press release. Bridgeport will, however, be open, so it's obviously a good paved alternative. So we're doing some reshaping of the gravel roads that took a beating out in that area. It should be starting today or tomorrow, depending on how wet it is out in that area. And Other than that, I'd say maybe next week, hopefully no later than the following, but our county dust control will go down. And I'll remind you, that will include some extra dust control because of the closure we will eventually have on 99. We are dust controlling some extra routes as kind of unofficial detour possibilities, because some of those folks have no choice but to drive gravel to get to a paved road. So there'll be some extra dust control on that part of it. Other than that, we're just moving along on our typical maintenance projects, and there's a whole lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, already starting to try stuff ready for next year.
All right. We appreciate it. Thank you. Department heads, we appreciate that. Any correspondence, gentlemen?
I have none.
On to discussion and vote. We have A, which is a resolution, 2023-25, and final plat for the first addition to Leonardale subdivision. Jared?
So the Leonardale subdivision, if you recall, that was about 5 years ago. It was basically a large farm property stretching back from Highway 61 along Rock Spring Road. Got split into 4 parts through an auction, and all went to different owners. And this subdivision involves the south lot along 61, kind of a C-shaped lot because it's got the old farmstead that was already split out previously. And so basically it'll take the existing property, turn it into 4 parts. The one that was not surveyed on the east side is the main reason for this at this time. They intend to sell that piece to another person who, it sounds like, wants to put some kind of storage building on part of that, and then just use the rest keep it as farmland. The challenge there was that I think they were initially hoping to get access from Highway 61, but of course the access is heavily controlled there, so that's why we have an easement on here on Lot 7 for accessing that remainder of Lot 4. The remainder, the 3 pieces that were actually platted, those all, or at least for now, are intended to stay in the same ownership. But the Lot 5 is being split off specifically because it contains a commercial business, the Country Treasures, that was developed several years ago, and that's just so that piece is separate from the rest of the farm ground that they own there. And then Lot 7 could potentially be sold in the future, but I think they're just taking it because they're out there surveying the lot now, that just to get that taken care of, just in case that piece were to be split off later. And those basically splits the farmland into 2 10 to 12 acre pieces. So in terms of access, like I said, the remainder of Lot 4 will have an access easement through Lot 7, and it sounds like an access has already been approved from Rock Spring Road there. And both lots 5 and 6 already have their own access points from Rock Spring. So it's no other significant comments received, so we recommend approval.
Move to approve resolution 2023-025.
Second. Moved in second. Sarah Marie?
Jim Carrey,
Yes.
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Shane Campbell.
Yes.
It's Country Treasures, not County Treasurers, as it once appeared on the agenda. Janelle's not here for that.
That's what you call reading between the lines.
Do these after All right. Next we have B, which is a Class C liquor license for Myers Tree Farm for May 27th, 23. Sheriff?
No concerns of Myers.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Moved in second. Sarah Marie?
Tom Brooker,
Yes.
Jim Carrey,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell.
Right on. Five C, Class C liquor license for Barn on the Ridge for 6/17/23. Sheriff?
No issues there.
Move to approve?
Second.
Sarah Marie?
Jim Carrey,
Yes.
Tom Brooker,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell.
Yes. Always cracks me up when I read that, the tipsy traveler. Righty. All right, 5D is accounts payable claims in the amount of, for checks, $1,217,357.44, $0 in wire transfer payments. Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second that.
Moved in second. Sarah Marie?
Carter, you had $950,000.
Did anybody else spend money other than me?
Yeah.
Thanks, Brian. Sarah Marie?
Tom Brooker,
Yes.
Jim Carrey,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell.
Yes.
I was looking over them bills and I thought, oh, God, Carter spent all their money.
He did.
He's selfish that way. He doesn't think about anybody else.
It's expensive when that concrete starts landing on the ground.
Yeah.
5E, we have payroll reimbursement claims in the amount of, for the 5/16/23 board meeting, the amount of $864.43.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Moved in second. Sarah Marie?
Tom Brooker,
Yes.
Jim Carrey,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell.
Yes. Okay, next we have some personnel actions. For the sheriff's office, this is for Thomas R. Plain, for courthouse security. He's given his resignation. Effective date is 5/15/23. And his final termination date is 5/10/23.
Move to approve?
Second.
Moved in second. Sarah Marie?
Jim Carrey,
Yes.
Tom Brooker,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell.
Yes. Tom, we thank you for your service. We have reports, the sheriff's monthly report of fees collected for April 2023, and the clerk's reports of fees collected for April 2023. These will be on file in the auditor's office, and you can look at this at your own leisure. At the sheriff's department, the amount was $16,476.31, and the clerk's report of fees collected was $11,987.36. Finally, we have 5H. You guys have been so kind today. I know it's been a long meeting. But we do have minutes for the regular meeting on May 9th, 2023. Can I get a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Moved in second. Sarah Marie?
Tom Brooker,
Yes.
Jim Carrey,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell.
Yes. All right. Gentlemen, other business. for agenda items.
Kevin, what do you call that DT? That was a
Defensive tactics?
defensive tactic. I think we ought to put that on the agenda and nominate you for it, Tom. What do you think?
Works for me. I would love to do that. I only do hand tactics, though. I don't do anything else. Just hand combat. Watch this. You know what I mean? And don't play.
I have nothing.
All right. Committee reports.
I attended the Southeast Iowa League, soon to be changed, mental health region advisory board meeting and governance board, and we discussed issues relating to our merger with the South Central Behavioral Region. Also approved maybe 15 contracts and an exception to policy, including Elevate's contract that everyone's excited about, the mobile crisis. So they are out trying to hire people even as we speak. So, and EFSP, Emergency Food and Shelter Program. The board met and we'd received $18,000 from the federal government, and we awarded that to Community Action. They had the only timely application. That's all I had.
All right, James.
I attended the Russ meeting. We had the mayors and a couple of council members from Holly there. They're way behind on their USDA payments, so we turned that into the county itself, or Keokuk County turned it into their treasurer and their auditor to put it on the tax rolls. And they failed to do that, that's why they're behind. So it's not really them getting the money to pay it, because when it goes on the tax roll, then they have to pay the city, and the city hasn't paid for it, and they're the ones responsible for the sewer. So hopefully we got that straightened out. It's been a long process. That's all I had.
I had workforce, and man, it's just like a broken record. There's a lot of jobs in Des Moines County. We're looking for bodies to fill them, and not just bodies, but people that want to make an honest wage and not have to look over your shoulder. There's plenty of ways to get a hustle on out there, I suppose, and people are doing it, but there's good jobs, and you can start with one, and it doesn't have to be the one you end with. I don't know what to say on top of that, but there's a lot of jobs available, and I guess I need to be more of a town crier about that. Maybe I'm not doing my job for that board, but I'm gonna try harder to let people know there's a lot of jobs out there that pay decent, and people keep moving up, and that makes another job available. So don't give in and don't be distressed. Get a job. Get a job, man. I'm telling you, change your life. Get a job. So that's all I've got for that. All right, now we've come to the time for public input. We would love to hear from you. You can call us at 319-753-8203 extension 4. Again, that number is 319-753-8203 extension 4. Or you can email us at board@dmcounty.com. That is board@dmcounty.com. It'll go to all of us. We're going to start the clock, and we'll give you a couple minutes to see if somebody wants to call in. While we're waiting, anyone? Natalie, tell us something interesting. Alrighty then. Boy, that was great. Woo! I'm blown away.
Give me a second. I'm on the spot. That's all I got.
That was great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're so interesting. Robert?
If if there are any city officials watching this meeting, would you please have somebody come over to the corner of Fifth and Maple and take a look at the hole in the street?
Where is it? Fifth and Maple?
Corner of Fifth and Maple.
And there's a hole in the street?
There is every spring.
Well, you heard it first. Robert just busted it out. Do something about that world here. If he would've said that was in the county, we'd have been on it. We'd have been putting down some gravel, splashing some cinnamon and raisins on top of that already. It'd been done. Where's John Billups? You make sure you tell him I said that.
I will mention that, we got an email string last night that, the DOT's bridge contractor doing the, bridge work on the overpass on Mediapolis Road. They started, decking today over top of the actual highway, so there is a one lane setup up there today, maybe tomorrow, but today for sure was at least what the request was. So I guess I wanted to mention, if you hear something, it should not be holding traffic up. They're supposed to have flaggers there, and they should be obviously alternating traffic through there. But I think while the lane that they're actually working over top of, they'll have closed. So they were hoping to maybe get over both lanes through the course of today. So they're making good progress on that. And I have something going on up on the edge of Kingston. I'm working with the levee district, the Two Rivers Drainage and Levee District. So there's some point I may either do a work session with you or even a session/tour up there, just to kind of give you a visual of some discussions I'm with them and some stuff like that. But I have some ducks to get in a row on multiple different things. They're looking for an access, and we have an old road easement that we don't use, and trying to figure out with the landowner if they'll maybe do some swapping around so that they can have a private access right there. So anyway, it's made some headway, so I thought I'd give you a heads up on it.
I just want to throw out again, just real quick, Sarah Marie brought it up, but we're trying to, summertime's coming up, and we don't want kids breaking into houses and getting into trouble because they're hungry. We want to save that for the thieves. We want to isolate those suckers all in one box. Amen to that. So I'm hoping that people will, a lot of kids are gonna be missing that one meal that they get. Some get 2 meals a day. They'll be missing out on that. So if we want kid-friendly type of foods, stuff that they can shove in the microwave or just open up and eat. If you wanna be a participant in that, you don't have to worry about delivering. I'm going to deliver it myself.
I thought schools did provide some meals during the summer.
They had a backpack program, and that's why I had a meeting with CP last week. They don't have a program. I don't know what happened to it, but something didn't happen. So this year, it's, they still have some programs, but they don't have the one where they were sending home the backpacks with kids all summer long. So we're trying to fill in and bridge that gap and meet with some partners so that we're not being redundant and we're not missing out on some services. So, which I appreciate you. We'll be dealing with that. But anybody who wants to participate, please do. I've got some meetings with a couple of different groups that I'm going to ask them if they want to be participants as well. But there's a lot of different ways you can reach and make a difference in Des Moines County, and that's one that I would like to encourage. And again, all you got to do is deliver it down to the auditor's office. I'll deliver it. And if you want to start one where you work, send me out an email. I'll come get it. I'll come pick it up when you're ready for me to get it. You won't have to worry about breaking a nail. So I would appreciate that. Think about that. Thomas, anything else before we get ready to shut her down?
Bye.
I didn't even say it yet. You're supposed to wait, Tom.
I can read.
We're dismissed. Thank you, everybody. He never waits, man. He never waits. Might as well get these real quick, guys. admin.
in the schools.
Cornbread. Sarah Marie, let me know when you're good. And we'll get this party started.
Go ahead.
Okay, this is a work session with SEIRPC regarding wind and solar ordinance. And we have, well, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves and then we'll turn it over to you.
All right, Zach James, Land Use Administrator.
Your Lassiter, Assistant Land Use Administrator.
I'm gonna go through, I got a little kind of one-page letter staff report that kind of gives some high-level stuff, and then we can kind of go through, we'll pick one and kind of go through it. They're pretty much mirror each other for the most part, but we'll go through one and kind of more specific changes. But we did have a work session about 2 months ago to kind of go through an initial draft of both wind and solar ordinances. Had a lot of things that came up from topics that we discussed at the previous work session, and some suggested changes, and some other topics to research a little bit further. So we've since met with,
Bob Lapp's
Yeah, all right, thanks.
yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, no worries. So we did had some follow-ups with Lynn County again on a couple topics. Clinton County, we hadn't talked to before, that we reached out to. We did meet with Trent a couple weeks ago to go over a few specific items. So and just done a little additional research at a couple ordinances and things like that. So. So along with the report, you've got updated versions of both ordinances, with some stuff that's been updated and changed, restructured some things quite a bit. So instead of a red line version, basically what we've done is try to highlight the things that have changed. So hopefully you can see what those things are and what's been updated. There's been some kind of formatting changes and combining of different sections a little bit to make it kind of flow a little bit better. We've tried to incorporate, Tom, I know you had two things, one on decommissioning.
Yeah, one on abandonment.
One on abandonment, one
surety
on the
bond.
bonds.
Yeah,
And
yes.
so we've tried to incorporate, not necessarily in the exact form you have, but we've kind of put pieces of that in different spots, hopefully, to address. I think we've hit everything in there, or pretty close to. And then we addressed a couple other things. We talked about like distance setbacks for the wind turbines and making that a little bit further distance through some of our conversations on decommissioning and cost estimates and bonding. Changed some language that was 10 years to 3 years. We'll talk more about that and why. Added a thing about, a little provision about local workers. Something that came up in our discussions previously, and we kind of went back and forth about whether to put something in there or what to put in there, so we did end up putting a little language in there on that. And we did update the fee structure a little bit, I think to better define that, number one, and then also to help, we've talked about the possibility of needing maybe bring in a consultant maybe to help reviewing plans and things like that, so the language in there kind of leaves it a little more open-ended to cover additional costs if needed for anything like that if we need to bring somebody on. So what I'll do is we'll kind of go through, maybe we'll pick the wind ordinance here and start with that one. And then kind of go through the items that are highlighted, and then if you got any questions or comments, we can kind of go through that, and then we can go through solar, although most of the stuff is identical. So we might just pick out certain things to focus on in that one too. But
So you went through the wind first?
yes, that's the one I've got open at least at the moment, so we can do the other way around, I guess if we
No,
want.
that's fine.
So on page 2, we added a thing under general provisions section about financial risk and responsibility, and this basically is a statement, Tom, that you had on that surety bond language that we put in here. Basically, it says all costs associated with the permitting, construction, installation, operation, maintenance, so on and so forth. The wind energy system shall solely be the responsibility of the developer, owner, and operator, and no such cost shall be passed on to Moines County's taxpayers or individual landowners. So we added that statement in there to help cover that.
Make it clear from the outset. So.
Yep, make it clear right at the beginning, that that's the intent. Abandonment, on page let's go to the next page, sorry, page 4, under definitions, or no, page
Three.
3, I'm sorry. Page 3, under definitions, abandonment, I can't remember now, was that in there before?
It was in there,
We
it
redefined
was
it.
just simplified, just to.
And you touch on it again later in the.
It's, we got a whole section
later
about
again.
it.
I guess the only thing I had, and we can talk about it, is with the 365, I had 9 months, and you got a year.
And I think if we're looking at taxing, because there's two different systems for property, to assess the property taxes. One being based on this initial cost kind of theory, and then splitting it out where that goes down, or doing it per kilowatt hour. And I think from discussion on that, what we've decided was to do for taxation, do it based on that lifetime cost and spread out over that formula they have, 35%, 30%, and on down.
What, the property, you mean?
With the property, yes. And then I think that longer time period to say it's abandoned, because really, when you're doing it by kilowatt hour, you're concerned saying, hey, you're stopping, you're no longer paying taxes. And that's part of the concern. Now, I think when we're saying abandonment, the big concern is, okay, now we need to start the decommissioning processes. I think it's a different concern.
And that's where once it's, I don't want, windmill running once in a while or something like that, say it's still operating or whatever. If it's not being used, or any portion of it's not being used,
Oh, I see.
and it doesn't, when they can't prove to us that they're gonna meet it, or they're gonna be used or something like that, I don't want it sitting there,
Okay. That's what
turning
you're
it
saying.
into a junkyard.
So is that, do we think that's the thing, that they would just plug it in for, like, theoretically? Plug it in for the day and say
I
they're
have
using
no
it?
idea. Look, it's either one of them. It's gonna be really expensive to decommission those.
Yeah.
The, matter of fact, I went online and found, a compliance filing from XL Energy to the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission from 2011. So they had to provide an estimate for decommissioning. Their estimate for decommissioning at that time was $445,000 per turbine and $2,009. In 2023 dollars, that's almost $630,000. And today's turbines are bigger than they were until about 2011. So the decommissioning of wind farms in the in 20 or 25 odd years, whatever it would be, is likely going to be measured in the hundreds of millions of dollars. The there's what? Wind and solar companies get massive federal subsidies. Mid-America builds a lot of them, as you know, that's owned by Berkshire Hathaway. And Warren Buffett, the head of Berkshire Hathaway, said that they get a tax credit if they build a lot of wind farms. That's the only reason to build them. They don't make sense without the tax credit. So the value of those things is based on subsidies.
Oh, yeah.
Eventually you collapse the market doing that. But forget the politics. Even the federal government can't do that forever. They're without subsidies, those installations aren't worth much. And the companies that depend on them won't have millions of dollars to decommission, or billions of dollars to decommission wind farms without those subsidies.
Those subsidies don't carry over to decommissioning.
They're spread out over 10 years. You're supposed to set money, who knows? All I'm saying is once those end, what happens to those companies? They wouldn't be the first energy companies to go bankrupt. Anybody ever heard of Enron? Or Pacific Gas and Electric? Or Texaco? I mean, so I'm just saying, whatever this ends up being, nobody is gonna be in a big rush, 10 years or 20 or whatever, to say, well, these aren't making money anymore, we gotta take them down.
Preach.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mike Carberry,
Yeah.
Bright Future Iowa. I've been in the renewable energy business since 2000.
Mhm.
You know, yes, there's subsidies, but every form of energy in this country is subsidized.
Not to
Depletion
that degree.
allowances, 45Q for, that we have, I mean, this is the truth. Every form of energy is subsidized by the federal government. But these are production tax credits that they get, and so they only get the credits if they're producing electricity. And I like your abandonment for 365. One thing is if you're treating your taxes, if you're treating it, and they're not producing, the other way to tax it is production or the land. If it slows down its production, it's not gonna affect the taxes. Because it's still, you're taxing it on the value of the asset and not on the production. So I like the fact that you're actually using 365, because it's not gonna affect your taxes.
Well,
It's their problem that they're not producing electricity, and if they're not producing it after 365, then they have to decommission it, right? So,
And that's, I do
that's
not
what the
disagree
surety
with
bond
that,
is
and that's
for.
what I thought Trent was first talking about. If they're being taxed annually on a property tax basis.
Yeah.
And that might be it. But my deal about those subsidies, whatever you wanna call it, everybody gets subsidies.
Yes.
Nothing gets anywhere the degree of subsidies that those, you can have those windmills and you can virtually bid zero on a procurement auction and they can still get it. You collapse you know how, whenever there was a famine in Africa, the United States with USA would rush hundreds of millions of tons of grain over to that, to Somalia or Mali.
Right.
What do you think that does to local farmers? If you put several hundred million tons of free farm produce there, they're done. So that's what's happening to, it's getting really hard for the fossil fuels, and I realize that's the goal. I'm just saying, this market's distorted. You have huge subsidies. They were just extended or increased in the
Inflation
Reduction Act.
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
They're
if those
putting them up for free. Yeah.
if those end, the world changes for the people that do this. They are not gonna have billions of dollars to say, okay, it's gonna take $100 million to clean up Des Moines County, you know, let's postpone this, or let's go bankrupt, because it isn't gonna be just Des Moines County. A lot of these work countrywide. You would be looking at billions and billions of dollars, and nobody's gonna be Johnny on the spot to pay that.
Well, if it's in your ordinance.
If it's in our ordinance
Yeah,
and
you have
somebody
the
goes
surety
bankrupt.
bond, you don't have anything to worry about.
Well, that's why we're going to have a surety bond
Yeah.
that's uncapped and undated.
But it probably needs to be reviewed. Did I see from 10 years down to 3?
No, that doesn't have any, no.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
We're gonna talk about it in a minute, but anyway, so I'll wait for that. But anyway, that's the point I was trying to make, is that, I would prefer to tax them on a property tax basis.
Yes,
You might make
agreed.
a lot of money for a few years, but sooner or later, that's kinda airy out there,
Yeah.
ethereal.
To this, we thought, we talked about it last time that we were gonna change it to 365 for 9 months, but
Well,
maybe we
and maybe
misinterpreted
we
it,
haven't,
so.
and quite honestly, and it might be, and that's be a good question.
Well, that's why we changed it to
If- And
365.
that's fine, and that's probably, that might be a good deal.
But that's
You
why
do
we
have-
did it, we.
And I
because your
appreciate
notes
that,
said-
you
your
do have
notes
any
said it was
portion,
9
you
months,
do have
so.
any portion there off, and I don't wanna have one windmill turning
No.
and 100 just sitting there.
Alright, let's see, page 5. That's where we, under bullet 2, we updated the distance, it was 1,000 feet, we made it to 1,250. That's kind of what we've seen as guidance, kind of the farthest that people would recommend.
And I have some thoughts on that I didn't really have before. First thing you read is you read through some of this stuff and they said, accidents are possible. They're extremely rare, but they are possible. Well, 3 of those blades have fallen off those turbines in the last 2.5 years, just in Iowa. One fell off in Adair County in September of 2020. One fell off in Greene County in October of 2020, and one fell off in Webster County just 3 months ago, in February of 2023. These things weigh 20,000 pounds, 180 foot long, whatever they are, and they just fell off. And you don't have to go very far on YouTube to see catching fire. And so anyway, so maybe it doesn't happen a lot, but 3 times in Iowa in the last 2 years of a blade actually coming off, that's not extremely rare. That's more accidents than my wife has in the car. So it's not. Anyway, so I guess, and the new turbines are bigger. They tell me they range from 400 to 500 foot to 700 to 800 foot. And that's like putting a 40 to 60 story building in the field behind your house. So how tall a 40 or 60 story building is. Anyway, and so I was looking at Page County just voted April 20, 2 or 3 weeks ago for a 1 mile setback from the property line and a 300 foot max height. And I had Madison County has some of these. So, what is it, one?
What was the county you just mentioned? I'm sorry.
Well,
No, the one before.
Oh, well, the ones that fell down, Webster County was 3 months ago, and then Adair and Green were both in September and October.
Page was the ordinance one.
Okay, that's the, yeah.
I'm sorry, PAGE. Anyway, Mid-American Energy had put turbines up, a bunch of turbines up in Madison County. So, and I don't know, I just read one article, and they wanted to put up 30 more turbines. Well, apparently Madison County wasn't quite as fond of those things after they had them put up. So they passed an ordinance that prohibited the installation of wind projects within 1.5 miles of non-participating landowners, and limited the height of turbines to less than 500 feet. Imposed strict noise limits and eliminated property tax breaks for wind projects. Well, Mid-America sues them. So, and about a year later, nobody says anybody was pressured, one of the supervisors changed her vote so that they could put in 30 more wind turbines. And those, each turbine, says here, this is a Forbes magazine, each turbine will yield $2.7 million in tax credits. So for 30 more, is about an extra $81 million for Mid-American. So I don't know whether they're gonna put in the turbines or not, but apparently they don't give a shit if the people don't want it. So anyway, I have concerns. And Page County, besides the mile from the property line, they put a 300 foot height limit on it. I don't know what that does to it. I'm sure it doesn't do it any good. But, so I have oh, and it does say here that, it says here, Madison County became the second Iowa county to ban wind projects. It says Adair County was the first. Evidently that fan blade falling off changed their mind. So anyway, I believe Page County's in the process right now. They have a moratorium on, just extended a moratorium on approving any more of those. So,
I think, but for an outright ban, I think those counties in particular have some, like Adair has that stinking, well, and a lot of communities have a water tower that they use as a landmark, but Adair is right off of Interstate 80, and it is a big landmark. Same with, the other one was the one with the bridges, right?
Madison County,
Yeah,
the one that was sued.
So both of those, I think, have some historic things that they're wanting to maintain.
Madison County has those,
Yeah.
covered bridges.
Yeah, so they would have better arguments for maintaining the site of, and the beauty of the countryside than we would. But, again, are you saying that somebody's talking about suing if they can't get what they want?
No, I'm just saying,
I'm
here,
not saying
I'm reading
anything,
out
I'm just
Forbes
listening
magazine.
at this point.
I'm reading out
If
Forbes
you have a
magazine and,
specific change or
Mid-American
something.
Energy sued Madison County.
So, I'm working in about 25 counties right now on ordinances, right? You've got three, and I'm a firm believer that good policy makes good projects. And on both wind and solar. We've got some counties that really don't have an ordinance, and they'll allow a developer to come in and do what they want. And you end up getting some bad projects. Louisa County allowed someone to come in and build the first solar farm, and it was not done well. A third of the whole array was installed upside down. You know, they tracked the sun, they were tracking it backwards. So in the morning, they were facing west, and in the evening, they were facing east. They had to reinstall a third of it, rewire all of it because they used unskilled labor. They put the wiring harnesses too tight, and after a little while, they all popped, so they had to reinstall. So you've got counties that don't do anything. You've got counties like Page, Madison, and Woodbury that are trying to zone out by by overly restrictive covenants in their ordinances on setbacks, corn suitability rating, zoning districts, all sorts of things that they say, we don't want wind and solar. And so they're putting very, very restrictive things in here. And then you have counties that have very reasonable requirements, but requirements are needed because developers will do anything that they won't do anything that you don't require them to do. So a very thoughtful process of writing and reviewing these ordinances is a wonderful thing. And you need to, if you want wind development and solar development, but it's reasonable, placed in the right places, and it benefits everybody, the taxpayers, the ratepayers, the neighbors, the existing, the landowners that are leasing or put an easement for their property, and even wildlife. If you do a project right, everybody wins. I call that beneficial wind and beneficial solar. For the most part, this is all really good. What we saw in Woodbury County says a Mid-American wanted to do a wind project there, Sioux City.
Sioux City, okay.
Sioux City. And they put a mile setback for their wind, between each turbine, and, you know, from property lines, everything else. Mid-American said if we had a mile setback, now Mid-American is the largest owner of wind farms in the country for a utility. They said in Iowa, and they have over 9,000 turbines in Iowa. They said they would have only been able to install 1% of their current fleet in Iowa with a 1 mile setback. That's what's called a poison pill. You can put those, you know, if you change had 1,000 feet. Some people are using, because the turbines are getting bigger, as you were saying, they're putting multiples of, instead of 1,200 feet, they say 1.25 times the height of the tip height. So you've got your tower, and then you've got your 180-foot blade. Well, the blades are getting longer, the towers are getting taller. So we're seeing 500-foot tip height turbines, and the tallest I've seen in Iowa so far is 580. But you could change the 1,250 feet to 2 times the tip height. And then if the turbines get bigger, the setback gets bigger, so you're not using feet, you're using multiples of the height of the turbine from the tip height. So there's just really good ways in your ordinance to have a really good project. But if Des Moines County doesn't want it, don't want these wind farms, don't want these solar farms, don't want the economic development, the taxes that they bring, then you can surely put poison pills in here that would make the developers go away. But I don't think that you wanna do that.
I'm
trying to go back to, I'm trying to go back.
Before we say anything,
Yeah.
I just want to say, we don't want nobody in this room wants to intentionally put in poison pills.
Yes,
No.
that's what I'm saying.
But we do want to make sure that we're doing what's responsible for the taxpayers.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
But, and let's go back to where was the genesis of this the reason why this came, and I know why it is because of the tax credits and everybody's trying to get involved in this, but for me, I'm just trying to make the best decision for Des Moines County long-term. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And how is this gonna benefit Des Moines County, all the citizens, long-term, you know, not short-term? And to me, my biggest concern, I'm not worried about half the stuff that was talked about. My biggest deal is decommission. When this is over and done with,
Yeah.
when, you know, how are we getting rid of this stuff? Power, or light, or, solar and wind. And that's what makes me nervous for Des Moines County. And I think a lot of communities should be nervous because we're all gung-ho. And no disrespect, I mean, you've been in since 2000, what'd you say, you've been in this?
Yeah, 23 years now.
For 23 years.
Yeah.
I just don't consider 23 years a long time for something that's new, you know what I'm saying?
I'm a
mean,
young man.
we haven't had a chance to see, we
Yeah.
haven't had a chance to see what's gonna happen when communities say, all right, it's a done deal. What's going to happen? How's this stuff gonna get torn down? How's this stuff gonna get
We've
taken care of?
seen-
And we make sure that Des Moines County doesn't have stuff leaching all over the flipping grounds and stuff.
Yeah, well, your ordinance, and I guess we'll get to it later, that it's all, should be in your ordinance. What you want to protect the taxpayers and the citizens of Des Moines County should be in your ordinance. Because you can't assume that a developer or a utility is gonna do the right thing. You have to force them to do the right thing by putting it in your ordinance. And you can protect your roads, the taxpayers, you can protect everything on decommissioning, you can put the height of, you know, these, concrete bases go down over 20 feet, you know, and so concrete removal is a thing, to restore the land once you've decommissioning so it can be farmed again. Those are the things you wanna have in your ordinance, and you wanna, and I agree, Shane, that you should wanna protect Des Moines County. That's your first priority, that's why you were elected, so.
But that's the same thing I had, you mentioned, you could put in, I've written down here, you'd have either a minimum of so many tower heights, or a minimum or X number of feet, whichever one was larger.
Yeah.
Depending on, so if it was higher towers, that can all be addressed.
Yeah.
And these aren't poison pills, but as I got looking around and seeing what other counties were doing that had some of these things, I'm a little concerned.
Well,
we were all elected, just like you said,
Yeah.
to take care of Des Moines County.
Yeah, I'm a former county supervisor, remember, in Johnson County, served one term, and I wrote the very first utility, solar and wind farm ordinances. Well, I didn't write it all myself, with our planning and development people and that sort of thing, but this whole thing, both your wind and solar, this is really good work. And I think that, it's very thoughtful. You've changed it a couple times based on your feedback. I think you're really on the right track here, so.
To get back to
Get back
this,
to
I
it.
mean, I
Sorry.
was, you know, you're talking about some of these other ones that are milestone, I mean, I don't know what we wanna put in here, but I'm listening and trying to understand, and I like the idea of maybe we have 1250 or something, whichever is greater.
And I don't know, mine went up a little bit after I looked at what some of those counties had put it in there, like Metz, that had these, and whatever their reasons are, I assume that once they were there, they were I had the impression when reading that article in Forbes that the public wasn't very fond of them. But whether that's true or not, and Page County was doing something interesting. They're going through that ordinance, and they'll spend one work session and come up, so this is what we're gonna do on siting requirements. You know, you have X number of feet and how high it can be, and then have another one on decommissioning, you know, and then have because there's the major things in there, and having 4 or 5, whatever it is, work sessions just devoted to that one item. And maybe you'd want a public hearing so people can come in. I don't know, I'm throwing that up there. I just ran across this, I was looking through stuff this weekend. But anyway, so yeah, I guess, and when you put in there, you put civic buildings, which I hadn't thought of, but you know, besides residential buildings, you have schools, churches, business, anywhere where people gather, and I guess I just stuck down here where you've got 1,250 feet. I had 2,500. Whether that's the right number or not, I don't know. That's almost half a mile. And then where you put somewhere else, where you said the height of the turbine plus 10% of that, I had a minimum of 1250, or the height of the turbine plus 10%, whichever was larger. And I don't know if those are the right numbers. And I don't think anybody on this board is trying to just ban them. But
That's
I'm
part of this too, we don't, cause you were talking about they're in,
Well, no,
getting
but-
sued and things like that, so
Well,
we wanna
and
make
I
sure
was
language
reading-
too doesn't
all-
get us
all I
in
was-
litigation
I was reading
forever.
right out of that article
Right.
from Forbes. And, but when I read about the blades falling off, and the way I understand it, there were more before that, I didn't even try to look back any farther than that.
I think 10% is too little if you're gonna do a percentage. Just my opinion. It's,
Well, it would be,
In section 3 there?
well,
So
you
it's the
mentioned,
height
you
of the
mentioned
turbine plus 10%, that's to detached garages, livestock confinements.
Well, what about
And other
roadways?
but you're also saying whichever's more, right?
you would want them far enough away from the road.
But you're saying whichever's more, so
Whichever
really,
would be more, I've
really
got
for a long
1,250 feet,
1250 is
or
gonna
the
control for a
height plus
while.
10%, whichever would be more, so 1,250 would be the minimum,
And 1250 would control for a while until the towers grow further.
until the towers grow, and I don't know how fast, when they put these up, do they come back
They repower them,
and
right?
do they just, on one other thing, I read somewhere in there that you want that 25 foot to the bottom of the blade. I spent a little time of my life in the air, 25 feet isn't very high.
The blades are about 75 foot off the ground.
Well,
When they
yeah,
sweep,
yeah, anyway, I was thinking in here, I saw someplace where we wanted them 25
Yes.
sounds, I can hit that with, I probably can't hit it with a baseball anymore.
Yeah.
Surely somebody in here can. But, I'd be lucky to be able to hit that wall. But, it's not that funny, Zach.
I have a picture of you like jumping like you're dunking basketball.
Yeah, but I'm just saying,
You're about as high on the ground.
I was thinking I saw in here, maybe I didn't, that 25 feet sounds
Yes.
awfully close to the
That is
ground.
what we have in here, which I think is, might even be higher than some of them.
I guess I thought, maybe you'd mentioned before, it was about 75 feet.
it is. That's their industry standard.
I would be more comfortable with 75 feet off the ground than the 20. Like I said, you get kids out there, they could hit, if it's 25 feet, they can hit that with rocks. And I
Yes.
suspect the outside of those blades has gotta be going 180
Yeah,
miles an hour or something like that.
the tip goes over 200 miles. I mean, they don't look like they're going fast,
Yeah.
but the tip of the blade is going about 200 miles an hour.
Swinging a rock on a
Yeah.
string. So yeah, so you would not want anybody to be able to throw something up and have something like that hit it. If it hit a kid, it would go right through his head.
I just have visions. I know in Boone, they have a golf course there, has a little par 3 that has about 90 foot of drop, and then right behind it's a cornfield. So I know every time I was on that, I took 2 or 3 mulligans with the big dog before they just hit it as far as you possibly can, and that would be awesome. I could see guys out there with golf clubs just hitting it to see if it catches a blade.
It wouldn't damage it. My golf ball's not gonna
No,
do
but
it.
It's not gonna damage him, but the golf ball's headed somewhere, and wherever it's headed is in this world of shit.
Well, you know,
Because
you
it's
see
gonna be a
people
projectile.
intentionally hitting golf balls at city parks into the river, right?
Sure.
What does that do? And there's actually golf balls now that, you know, on cruise ships, they have the same thing.
So it's
And they
all-
have certain golf balls that are meant to be hit into the water and things like that, but I don't know if they make one that you can hit a turbine with, but I don't think it would damage the turbine at all. But 75 foot is about where they're at. You're talking about multiples of height, I don't think 10% is probably enough. You know, one thing you could do here is 1,250 feet or 2 times the tower height,
Yeah.
whichever is.
Whichever's larger,
Yeah,
greater.
yeah, that wouldn't determine, because 20 years ago, the blades were 120 feet long, then they went to 150, then, now they're about 180, and we're gonna see, the limiting factor is the interstate system and moving the blades. You know, you have a blade manufacturer just south of here, right? And to truck those around, 180 foot is about, I mean, we're not gonna see blades, much longer than that. They possibly could get to 200 feet, but that's why we're seeing,
The state will just change the road laws.
well,
They've
how,
already
yeah, how
done
are we
that
gonna
on-
do
on
it? I
dump
mean, those are
trucks.
so long, you just can't make a turn with a
That's
200
that,
foot.
it's not because they don't wanna let them, it's because they can't make turns, they
Yeah.
can't get on and
Yeah.
off of stuff. Because they've already rebuilt it down there to try to accommodate
Yeah.
what they have.
They can get Amazon to deliver them with drones.
Big ground.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I'm just throwing this, I've taken some notes, you might have noticed. Anyway, so I'm just,
Open mind.
I was, I'm more comfortable with the 1250 for virtually everything. Obviously, if somebody's
But you
got
said- so
their
now
own
I mean-
land, you know, and they wanna put it next to their house, you know, I think you probably have to have something in there that they can waive it on their own property if I want it, you know.
If it's their own.
You know, I want my house directly underneath it, but, and like I said, if you, cause I drove to New Sharon, maybe you know where that is probably, they've gotten, I don't know how tall those towers are,
Probably 500 feet.
are they, okay, anyway, they're big. And anyway, and so I got out of the car and I tried
Touch
to
it.
imagine one of them, you know.
How far
'cause
could
they're-
you throw?
Yeah, that's why I said, did you hit it with a rock?
They were safe, matter of fact, the ditches were probably safe. But, and just to get a feeling, cause like I said, that's like a 40-story building. You know, when you look out, but, you know, I went and looked from, where I live is just about exactly half a mile to Sunnyside. So, I could stand on Sunnyside and look, and there's, right across the street from me, there's a tree that's probably 80 foot high, and I can see that. That's the highest obstacle was. And I was trying to imagine something that would be 400 or 500, whatever it was, feet higher than that. That's so anyway, half a mile doesn't sound like a long distance to me as I looked at them. But, and like I said, and I just said, some people have moved that longer, so I don't know. I have concerns about it. Part of the county has obviously, you know, recognized interest in this. We have recognized interest, it's our tax base, you know, for the decommissioning of it. But we also have a responsibility to the private property owners for them to safely, you know, use their property and enjoyment of their property. And I realize you can't change anything, but I think hog confinements, I think those go up to 3,000, 3,500 feet. You have to have those away from any
1,250 is the setback for a hog confinement.
from an occupied
From an
residence.
occupied dwelling, 1,250 feet is the setback in Iowa. It's
Okay,
a,
'cause I looked it
state
up and I don't know
control.
whether it was, but they had a number of different,
There's 3 different sizes of CAFOs. You have some that aren't permitted at all, then you have kind of the medium
the
size.
bigger one is 3,000 feet is what I found.
Yeah, well, then you have to have then, that has to go through the master matrix when they're over 2,500 hogs. Between 1,250 and 2,400, you have to, or 2,500, you have to have a manure management plan. But under 1,250 hogs, you don't need any permit. You can build them anywhere, and that's DNR and the,
But if you have over 1,250, then there's,
Nobody in the business will deal with under 1250. They
Yeah,
all
so
want
they're
the-
capping it on purpose.
They all want the 2499 because it's the
The
easiest
2,500.
regulation, well,
Right.
they, under
Sure,
2500.
sure.
yeah,
They all want that because it avoids some of the excessive regulation on the
Correct.
next size up.
Right.
But it's the max they can get for the easiest they can get.
right. But
You
then they
you
put
won't
them up
see it.
separately, right next to each other, and each one is
Yeah.
a different owner, a different
Yep.
LLC.
You won't see a 1250 anymore, the industry's passed that a long time ago.
Where are they going now?
Well, they're 25, and if the state relaxes, it'll go bigger. They'll
Oh,
go
no,
as big as they
I'm
can.
talking about setback,
I'm just talking about. I'm just talking about
size. So, yeah, you're
I didn't know what the setbacks were.
24.99 is kind of the average size, yeah. Or, you know, right up to the limit.
The feeder.
And so I'm not sure, except that
Every day they show up and eat.
1250 sounds
Yeah.
really, really close
All out of
to an occupied structure. Really, really close. And I went, and the day I was up there, it seemed like some of them made a little more noise than others, and I suppose some of them maybe need, who knows? And it was windy, so you couldn't hear, but you could hear them if you were that close. And I don't know much about, it was well, kind of a cloudy, wasn't really a sunny day, so I didn't have any, what do you call it, the shadow flicker. So I didn't see any of that. But I just went up so I could see up close, because the one in New London is just a single one, and it isn't that big. I don't know how big it is. But anyway, like I said, it's you know, we're responsible for, for private property owners, for the use of and safe use of and enjoyment of their property. So if put a 40-story windmill, eighth of a mile or half a mile or quarter of a mile away in the field behind my house, that sounds pretty close to me.
4
Then this
football
might-
fields.
What?
Everybody knows what a football field is, right? It's 100 yards plus 10 yards each side on the end zone. That's
Yeah.
100, so it's 120 yards. 1,250 feet is basically 4 football fields away.
Yeah.
Football field's pretty big. It's about an acre. But, I mean, so it's quarter mile.
Yep, no,
Yeah.
understand.
And if
I'm
you
just
get
saying,
up, if you
a
double
40
that.
to 60-foot tall structure,
Yeah.
or 40,
Yeah.
a 500 or 600-foot tall structure or more is an imposing
Yeah,
piece of
we don't see that
architecture.
many, but you see football fields all over Iowa, right? High schools have them.
But they're
Everybody
flat.
knows, yeah, everybody knows how long a football field is. And so
Yeah.
your 1,250 feet is about 4 football fields.
Stand at the end, where you can look at something,
Yeah.
and then imagine something, when you're right now, the highest thing around you is a barn that's
You were talking about the blades with 3 ones dropping in the last 3 years. They don't throw them. When something that weighs a couple hundred tons falls off, it drops. It's not good. So it's gonna fall within
Right on.
1.1% of the height of it, right? It might be a little bit out, but it's not gonna be, the blade isn't gonna fall 1,200 feet.
And
It's gonna fall the length and maybe plus 10%.
I've got it here in Iowa County magazine from June 2019. Anyway, and it says, when blade throws occur, most pieces will be found within 500 feet of the tower.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm sure most pieces will be found within 500 feet of the tower, but it doesn't take a very big piece of a 20,000-pound blade to go a little further than that and do some serious damage. So most pieces didn't comfort me very much.
But in here you got 1,250. They
Well,
said-
no, I'm just saying, that's part of the reason where that came from.
So that's
Is
2.5
when I looked at
times.
that, when they were talking,
So your 1,250 is 2.5 times your 500 feet, so.
Yep.
If you go more than 2 times or 1,250, you said you didn't want poison pills. If you go up to 2,500 feet, that's a half a mile. That would severely restrict a developer's desire to build in this county.
and I understand there,
Yeah.
but just because something that we're concerned about, that we want, doesn't make it a poison pill. There's a couple of things in here, that and whatever the board's comfortable with, or maybe we should have a public hearing and discuss some of that stuff. I'm just, right now, I would be at 2,500 feet from a civic building or a residential building, and 1,250 from everything else.
Well, so, Tom, one thing I'll say before we get into having a public meeting, before we move.
Uh-huh.
I mean, just to kind of put some urgency to this, part of the reality and part of why we came to this was, counties that didn't have anything in place, they're going to the State Board of Energy, getting a permit, and they're putting it up. And we're getting told afterwards. So, we do wanna get something, and we do wanna get something, we can amend it if we need to. But we definitely wanna get something voted on and on the books. before.
I agree, and the problem with amending it is I think that's how Madison County got sued.
Well, I don't know the details of that
Well, and
case,
I don't either, but
But
it
that
looks-
doesn't change the legal standards. I mean, we could do anything today
Uh-huh.
that we could do tomorrow, and whether we approve one or put one on the agenda for 2 weeks from now, a month from now, that legal standard's not gonna change, whether there's something there and there's amendment. If there's a legitimate concern that we have for the taxpayers, that you have for the taxpayers, we can regulate that. But, we don't wanna take a long time getting this put together.
But I don't disagree.
You know, first thing, I think we're going a little bit backwards. This is my concern. On decommissioning, or we should start right after building it and then go to decommissioning and then get the rest of it. Because they've got to get a surety bond renewed every 3 years. But it does not give us any insurance after the 3 years. If they don't renew it, then it comes to us.
That's part of our process is to notify them, and there's be a process where they've gotta renew it.
So what,
submit
I'm
it
not
to
gonna
us.
renew it, I don't wanna renew it, then what happens? We're gonna shut it down the 31st of this month, and we're not renewing it. Then what happens?
This is the only time we have any leverage. Once that thing's in place.
And until we get guarantee on that, I will not do anything with the rest of it, I might as well be honest. Cause I got grandkids that are gonna grow up here, I've got kids that live around here in Moines County, and I couldn't do that to them.
We could require that renewal be 6 months early maybe. So that would then mean,
It's gotta be in there somewhere.
if they decide they don't wanna renew it, or haven't provided us proof of renewal 6 months before the old one lapses, then you would execute on the old one, so we can write that in there somehow.
The proposal I'd made, if we want to jump to that, as you guys know, is a surety bond with no number on it. Just, they agreed, dismantle the complete installation above and below ground, safely recycling the materials, no dumping in the county landfill, remediation of soil and water contamination, returning land to condition prior to the installation, the cost of any damage to the county road system during installation, operation, maintenance, repair, modification, or decommissioning. Also cover the costs of any legal actions related to the installation, operation, maintenance, repair, modification, and decommissioning of the project, including defense and settlement costs. The bond must provide liability insurance coverage for the county in the event the project's owner or operator's liability insurance lapses for any reason. Doesn't matter if the project's sold to another party, retired at the end of its useful lifespan, ceases operations, is abandoned or damaged by weather, vandalism, accident, neglect, whatever. And due to the potentially huge and uncertain nature of the costs involved, Des Moines County will not accept any surety bond with a cap on potential damages or costs, and the bond will remain in effect until the land is returned to its pre-development condition and the county is satisfied that all contamination has been identified and remediated.
That's nice.
Yeah.
So anyway,
We've put all those things in here except for the cap, and that's after we talked to Trent, that's why we put a multiplier on it as opposed to a cap, because he was concerned about
So
some.
you got 3 times.
Well,
and we've talked about this, these costs, like I said, that we talked about earlier, if they put 100, 200 turbines, somebody in Des Moines County, whatever, the county has no resources to touch that if they walk away. If they go bankrupt, if they sell it to somebody else, if a tornado goes through, whatever happens, the county cannot do that. The landowners cannot do that. That is more risk than the county can possibly accept. And every contract that and I'm familiar with contracts, every contract when I had a construction company dealt with risk. You know, it said, okay, you're gonna cover this, or this is your responsibility. All contracts cover risk. And the contract addresses that. And if it doesn't address it, it falls on the guy that should have taken care of it. If this is the only time the county has the ability to require that. Once that's in place, they can say, yeah. And like Mike said, they're gonna do what we expect them to do, or what we have to do. They're in business to make money. I've got any problem with that. The risk in this is so significant, I don't have to go through it. But anyway, and I'm familiar with contracts to the extent that I'm sure I've signed well over 1,000 contracts or whatever. And I was familiar with the risks in all those. Periodically, a job would come along, oh wow, we're in downtown Iowa City, we're in downtown whatever, Cedar Rapids or whatever, this is a great job, you know, I really wanna do this, we should make good money on it, it'll be good, you know. And if I couldn't get all those risks addressed, there were a handful of times I thought, what could happen? And of course, the guy on the other end of the contract said it's not gonna be a problem. Quite often that problem appeared, and it was my problem. And I learned after a few years that no matter how bad I wanted that job, if there was something in that contract that I was afraid of, I just didn't sign it. Matter of fact, I can think of a couple, 3 jobs right off the top of my head, right up in downtown Davenport, that I saw what happened to the contractor that did take it. And it wasn't very pretty. But they approached me and I said, as long as that line's in the specifications, I said, I'm not doing it. So, whatever, you know, that bond costs is the cost of that transaction. If that cost isn't absorbed by somebody else, it's gonna be accepted, that risk is gonna be accepted by Des Moines County. And however small that risk, it is a risk that Des Moines County cannot afford.
You have that same requirement for road projects or other projects that you get?
They aren't gonna leave $100 million junkyard or land contamination or anything like a solar farm. No, we don't.
You can put a cost on a road project.
What?
You can put a cost on
We
a
can
road
put we know what it's gonna cost to build a road project.
And we own the road.
This is some, and those people, like I said, if you're gonna value one of those, you have to take into account those subsidies. And those subsidies could change from one administration to the other. They went away for a few years ago, then they're come back. You cannot value those. You can only guess. And those costs, they don't have to miss it very far and they bankrupt Des Moines County.
Oh, I haven't got into the language here, but they provide an estimate, they pay for a third party to review it.
Yep.
And then we ask them for a bond that's 2 times the value, it could be more, we just put that in there, but talking with Trent, it should have a value of some kind. It could be 3, it could be 4, I don't know.
And I know we've had
But
this
there's a
discussion
procedure where they come up with something, and we can make it open-ended, but we put it in here this way after consulting with the county attorney's office to have a multiplier in there.
So I know we've had this discussion, and my thought process was, we know at the very beginning, there's a requirement that there be estimate, total lifespan estimate. So that includes the decommissioning. And
We've added other language in here to cover, because we had stuff in here for initial damage to the road system, we also added it so that there's in decommissioning, if there's damage to the
repair
road.
or anything else, yes.
So we've added some other things in here to cover additional costs that we didn't initially have in here.
I am not, then you negotiate what 3 times of it is worth, in 3 years, 6 months, 10 years, whatever it is, and then.
That's part of the reason it's updated on a 3-year cycle.
We're doing it, but this is the only time we have any leverage. After that, it's everybody's, no, we've estimated and it's worth $10 million or $100 million or whatever it is. We get somebody who said, yeah, probably fine. there's risk there. I'm just saying Des Moines County, in my opinion, can't accept those risks. I wanna know going in that this is gonna be covered and that bond will be in place for the insurance, for the repairs, for the decommissioning, for everything until it's gone. Maybe that's 10 years, maybe it's 20 years, maybe it's 50 years.
See, you want a bond that's you want a bond right at the beginning that's open-ended, that
Open-
lasts for
open-ended,
50 years or
Open
20 years.
and uncapped.
I mean, we could put that in here,
So how much money do
I-
they
I
put in
don't
then?
think.
I have no idea.
That's what he's
All I'm saying
saying, no.
is we wanted, bonding companies are in the business of estimating and assuming risk.
Right.
If they can't price that and are not unwilling to take that risk, why would Des Moines County take that risk?
Well, you're putting it all in the document that you're not taking, that they assume 100% of the risk, and that's what the surety bond is for. But there has to be an estimated cost for how much money, how big is the bond? You can't have, is it $1? It's open-ended, but I mean, you can't get a bond that's open-ended. It has to be, a surety bond has to have a certain price on it. It's 3 times, the estimated cost of this project or the decommissioning is $10 million. And then maybe they have it's 2 times, you have a $20 million surety bond. You need to put, in my mind, or to make the project work, that, it has to have a number. And that's why it went from 10 years to 3 years, because things change, the market changes. But it has
Part of the
really
reason
nothing to
we
do.
changed it to
They changed.
3 years was talking to other counties and
Yeah.
then talking to somebody here that does bonding, is that they don't typically do bonds for more than 3 or 4 years.
I'm not saying, I'm sure it's expensive. Doesn't matter, that's
Yeah.
part of that, that's part of this
I
transaction.
just don't even know that they
Whatever-
do it, is
Whatever,
what I'm getting
well,
at.
if they won't do it, why would we?
And I wanna.
They're in
throw
the
this out-
business.
I wanna throw this out there though, since you brought that up too. My only, to add on to what Tom said is, I would feel a whole lot more comfortable. You said maybe we should have a public hearing. I'd like to have one. This is going to affect people in Des Moines County, and I would like to hear what they have to say about it as well before we go forward, because I'm not the expert. I don't live on a farm, and, I want somebody that this would affect, that they could come in, at least have something to say on this before we put something in blood. That was just my thought.
And if all correct, we would have to have public hearings for an ordinance. We would have to have 3 public hearings, and then you could publish something, and the public could come in and say, we like this, or we don't like this. Typically, they come in when they say we don't like this, for whatever reason, but that's neither here. So, yeah, we'll have to, and if we wanted to come up and put numbers in here now, we can do that, and then publish it, and I don't know, maybe that's the thing to do to get it underway. And then if everybody's unhappy with this or that, we can change this. But as far as but back to that, if a company, that's what bonding companies do, is they price and assume risk. If they are unwilling to, if that's too much risk for them, it's too much risk for Des Moines County.
Tom wants donut risk for Des Moines County.
Yeah.
Every 3 years, then they reevaluate what the project's worth. Who's gonna reevaluate that? The company?
It's listed in here, so they provide an estimate
They provide
themselves.
an estimate
And then
themselves.
they pay the cost for us to pick our own company that we want to evaluate their estimate.
But then if you put that,
And then they have to get a new bond based on that
based on
estimate.
that reestimate,
Yes.
what if that reestimate doesn't cover, there's a lot of estimates don't cover,
That-
all of a sudden we got $2 more million we need to come up with to decommission this, then it falls back on the county.
Right, and that's why I said to propose an amount in there, 2.5 times, 3.5 times that estimate, whatever it may be. And the reason I like a solid number is from a litigation standpoint afterwards, having dealt with insurance companies, I was in private practice, if they have liability, their exposure, they're insured up to say $5 million, and you come in and say, hey, this is gonna be $1.8 million, they're pretty quick to write that check.
Yeah.
Where if they have this kind of amorphous, unknown liability, is it $1, is it $100 million? We don't know, but I think the odds on that getting litigated are significantly higher in the end, during that decommissioning process. So as we're saying, hey, you need to go back and, plan, I don't know, hay to help get the ground better, but something, that's not my specialty. But do something to get the land so it's now ready to be farmed in 5 years or whatever. And we get put, I think that it's a lot easier if there is a hard number that they know in their mind that
A
they've
hard number
insured
or a hard, like 3 times the, 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, and that number, that's what we're putting in, we can put a multiple
It
in
doesn't give
there
us a,
to say, we want an estimate, and then we want it 2 times that estimate,
Yeah, that
and
would
roll
be
it every so often, 3 years, 5 years,
Yeah.
whatever it is. That way we have an estimate, we're always above that estimate, so we can reasonably say to the taxpayer, we're trying to protect you.
and so, and if we did, Thomas, we're only gonna be out. We would only be out, cause it has to go every 3 years. So if they dropped it, we would only be out whatever, you know what I'm saying, 3 years worth of.
Part of the bond is to cover cost of liability. Basically, it's to pay for insurance in case they lapse.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's in that bond already, so before it runs out, you can basically pick up.
And, go ahead, Jim.
So there is a built-in, I forgot about that, but that goes back to your comment earlier about, well, what if they don't renew? There's a thing in there, so I apologize, I forgot about that.
So, like Trent says, we can put in there that they renew it 6 months, have a renewal 6 months, like, so for 2.5, it's a 3-year bond, but they've gotta renew that thing in 6 months prior to the ending of it, which would give us another 3.5 years, basically.
Yes, yes.
But then,
And if in 20 or 30 years, there's gonna be a lot of decommissioning going on.
I agree with you.
I don't know if these
The
outfits.
reason the 3 year, well, there's 2 reasons for the 3 years, cause the price is gonna change and it's gonna go up.
Interest rates, so forth, so you.
And then, because the bonding is on a shorter cycle, from what we understand, that's why you do it on a 3-year, cause you're not gonna get somebody to do a bond for 25 years.
There's gonna be some
What
communities that got a
happens
lot.
if somebody, the bonding company.
Cause we had it at 10 years before, but after we did some more research and talking to people, that's what we
If
did.
bonding company comes back and says, we think this is a bad deal, we're not gonna bond it for the 3 times, which you've got in there on the second
They don't
renewal. The
do
first
it,
time
I
it's 2 times, then you're coming back with 3 times what the evaluation is, the way I'm reading this. So, what happens, they say, we're not gonna renew this,
What?
so
Then they need to find a new bonding company.
they're gonna have
But-
to find a bonding company.
Yeah, but that's why it's intertwined, so part of that initial bond is for default. So if they're not able to bond it that second time around, then they say, okay, we execute the bond and we have them decommissioned immediately.
Am I reading that right, when you go on E,
It might be a typo.
and it says here, financial security shall cover no less than 2 times the total cost identified in section D, plus the cost provided liability insurance coverage, county, in the event of the development liability coverage lapse, any reason. And go down to 3, and it says, continues renewal every 3 years throughout the lifespan of the CWECS following a
Oh,
reevaluation.
yeah, I see it now, I missed
And
that
you got
one.
3 years in there.
I missed that, it was meant to be consistent, I'm sorry.
Where are you? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I don't know where you're at.
I see it, it's on page 17, cause I had it as, I forgot that was there too.
And that number is just two, it
Now we're
could
going
be
back down
something
to two
different,
again.
it could be, or.
It would be one or the other all the way through consistently, that's what it's meant to be. I'm sorry I missed that part.
Okay.
So, and I'm just looking for ways to kind of say, how do we make it simple on both ends, yet truly cover? And I think a multiple is one way that we can do that, if that multiple is high enough, and we do have measures put in, so we can hire somebody. And I do think we will end up having two companies in Iowa that do this, simply because, like, even on property taxes, there's basically two firms in Iowa that really do these real big dollar property tax, and one that, you know, does state stuff, and one that does private equity stuff, right? And I think it'll probably end up that way with these, not just because of our code, or our ordinance that we're looking at, but because on the outset, it requires two companies, one hired by the state, one hired by private equity that's trying to come in and do the development. So I think that there will be that in there, because that's how they're doing those lifetime estimates, is you have two separate companies.
I don't follow, what do you mean two separate companies? I didn't follow that.
So part of this 3-year rolling estimate, or 5, whatever it is we're saying, hey, you guys are gonna have to finance company A, whoever that is that you want to give your estimate for the next 3 years at risk, and then risk of decommissioning and all that, and we're gonna have one that we pick. And there's several areas where we have things like that.
You mean someone, an engineering company?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly, yes.
I thought you were talking about a bonding company, okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, however it shakes out, if a bonding company wants to put in their own cadaster's office, or not CAD, I mean, so their own people that do that risk assessment, I suppose, but yeah, probably, I would imagine engineer firm, architecture firm,
I would
something like
guess there's
that, yeah.
some firms that specialize in this with as much stuff as there is out there, whether it be a consulting firm with a specialty in, or whether it's an actual individual firm. There's
Yeah.
somebody that specializes in this.
Yeah,
Well, I know I won't be around 20-something years.
Yeah, sure,
But I
pal.
guarantee you, if this starts costing you Moines County, some of these younger people's gonna know which the hell I was.
yeah, and then I still will be here, I'll be with sticks.
Living on Trent. Good idea.
Yeah, this is a 30-year project usually. Any wind farm, solar farm is usually 25 to 30 years.
Yeah.
If you're requiring 3 years that this be reevaluated and the bond be renewed, you're basically doing it at the beginning and then 9 times more, or eight or 9 times more every 3 years. You're gonna be covered because you've got the multiplier in there. As the costs go up, the bond has to go up to match the multiplier. So even at the end, you say you're not gonna be around for 30 years, Jim, I hope that you are, and that you're of sound mind and body, but you'll be covered. And the citizens and the taxpayers of Des Moines County will be covered. I think what you read was amazing. Was that already in the ordinance?
I wrote that.
You wrote that. That's pretty good stuff.
The,
30 years, I'm gonna be the oldest guy in.
so let me go question. So
And
anyway,
to that point, we didn't put that exactly in there, but we have the pieces of
Yeah,
that
yeah.
in sections
the,
in there.
I'm just trying to get my head around
Except for
this.
the no cap, we changed it after talking to Trent.
So if you require that every 3 years, and they have to provide that 6 months early?
That's
Well,
what-
that's what we just talked
Trent
about. is
said he
that
So
we
they have
should
to-
clear in here.
If they have to supply it 6 months early, if they can't provide it, then they've defaulted?
Yeah, then at that point, we can enforce decommissioning. I think that's something we should put in. I've dealt with, like, companies that are, with other companies where they're requiring things to be insured. And I've done some second contracts, third contracts, where there's been a history of problems. And you put those things in there 3 months out, 6 months out, so that way there's time to act. Because otherwise, if we say it's not there, and we have 30 days to act, or even, or less, to say, okay, now we need to get our money from that first bonding company, we're way, way beyond, we're moving a bazillion miles an hour. Now we can, but we're not designed to function that fast. But if we say, hey, you got 6 months, you need to prove it, and you need to provide that. If it's not provided to us at that 6-month date, we then have a meeting, we send them out a letter saying, hey, well, you need to provide that within 10 days. Now we're almost a month down the road. See, so, and then they provide it or they don't. If they don't, then we need to start to notice that initial bonding company that we need to execute for this decommissioning because it's not paid. And
But the contract or the bond would say that you have, at 6 months early,
yeah.
you need to provide this bond. If that bond isn't provided 6 months early, you're in default, and your bonding company needs to decommission this installation.
Yeah, I think we need to put that in there to cover.
That would have to be in there.
With that rotation.
So that would be sort of self-perpetuating.
Yes, yeah, and then that does put, so say if they're bonded with ABC bonding, I don't know. But say they're bonded with ABC bonding, and you get closer to that 6 months, or we're sending them a letter saying, hey, we're gonna need to, start the decommissioning process, and realize they gotta write that check, they might put pressure on that company, hey, that does give everybody a little bit of, puts everybody a little bit of skin in the game. The first bonding company to reissue a bond.
I don't want any skin in the
versus-
game.
Well, I know what you're saying, but if nothing happens, we do, right? Say if nothing happens and they walk away, and
Yeah,
the bond expires, and we do.
And the 6-month thing doesn't matter, because after that first cycle, where it's actually 2.5 years, after that, it's a 3-year cycle.
Yeah.
The 6 months settles in, and you're still talking about a 3-year cycle that they have to get this done. So really, the only time you're shortchanging it is the very first one. That's a deal breaker, it's a deal breaker. But at least gives the county time to react before you get to that full 3-year window.
And we're at 3 times the estimated value.
I'm cool with that.
We had it at, well, there was a
You're
typo
right.
in there, we had it as 2, but it could be whatever, we just put it in there so you can see the language.
Well, I can actually even
The
get-
multiplier could be,
Well,
whatever, technically whatever you want it to be.
Well, no, and I'm a little more comfortable. I'm just, like I said, these costs, no county I know of can afford those costs. No landowner can afford those costs.
Yeah.
If somebody walks away from that, if there's a tornado that hits it, or if the market goes to shit and this, excuse my French.
It's on tape, Tom.
Well, I know.
have you ever seen electricity rates go down in your life?
But
In the market for what?
But there's all sorts of things happen in that market. They're already telling us, they said, that the generating capacity, our generating capacity is going down every year. Alliant Energy told me that.
I don't know what that means.
That means they can't generate as much. When they start taking the coal plants and the gas plants offline, their generating capacity is.
Alliant Energy is even more active in wind right now and solar than Mid-American.
I know that, and they get a lot of encouragement for that, and all that's fine and good. I'm just saying, I've been in 2 meetings with them, and they said their generating capacity is going down, is decreasing. And, so they're trying to keep up with windmills and stuff, because they're supposed to put the rest of it out of business. Anyway, but and I understand that would be self-perpetuating, and I can see that. I just don't. For everything else aside, I don't want any Des Moines County skin in this game. Like Jim says, the 3 of us won't be sitting here when this is, I'll be retired in the Bahamas or whatever. But somebody will. Somebody's gonna have to pick up that bill, or live in a huge dump, in a junkyard.
And a big hit to the tax base.
You either live with it,
Particularly when you talk somebody.
and they're gonna lose the tax base, because if nobody can afford it, they'll just walk away from it.
Well, that's what the bond is for.
Well, that's what I'm
protect
saying,
you.
but I'm just saying, if it wasn't,
Yeah.
this is what I don't wanna happen.
Well, no project gets built without these bonds. No county wants the liability. This is not the first time that the counties have gone through this, right?
Nope.
And they're all protecting themselves. Nobody wants the liability to the county or the county's taxpayers.
Understood, so
Yeah.
anyway, but this, go ahead.
Most of the stuff we deal with does not have a 30-year tag on it either. Most of it's building a building.
That's
2
why it's
years,
renewed
3
every 3 years.
What's that?
It's 10 3-year contracts is what the.
That's right, that's right, but,
Yeah, and so one of my questions is, you were talking about poison pills earlier. Having a bond that's three
No,
times the
we
size.
don't want poison pills.
No, we
That's-
don't, but
that's-
three-
that's-
but
The language has not been said by
No,
anybody but you.
no, exactly, but,
Let's keep it that way.
okay, I'm just telling you that if you have a bond, first it was 2, and it's 2 in the ordinance or the draft. If you raise it to 3, that might, I have not talked to developers or utilities whether they're paying a multiple of 3 times in a surety bond. I'm not sure whether that's a doable thing.
They're trying, well, and I know, they're trying to make me comfortable with it. But I'm just saying, the value of these things is gonna vary wildly, and if they start taking down a bunch of them, it'll be pretty expensive to take them down. Cause you're gonna call a demolition company or something like that, and they're gonna say, well, we already got 3 wind farms or solar, this year. It's like anything else, if it's in high demand, anyway, so I think I could probably live with that, the 3, and then the 3 years, 6 months, that they have to
Yeah, we need to-
renew it 6 months early, or they're in default. But then like Trent says, they just like to write a check rather than doing it. So I suspect if that would happen, they'd write us a check, and then we'd have to be in charge of doing it. And it probably would cost us a multiple of what it would cost somebody else. Brian would be bitching about being out there taking care of it, taking it down all the time. Conservation would be out there to make sure you didn't get any oil on the ground.
We didn't even get through half of the stuff in here, but there was stuff in here that, like in decommissioning and the purpose statement, we added a thing about do not place any financial obligation on the county or the taxpayers.
Well, let's just have another work session.
We had talked about completely removing all structures below ground before I had a cap at like 5 feet or something like that. So there was some stuff in here that, hopefully you read it and you saw it, but I think we addressed a lot of things that we talked about before.
most of it we've done. I agree with quite a little bit of that in there, but like I said, my main thing is we probably should have started on decommissioning first.
Because that's the big concern.
That's my
Because that's the
big
big
concern.
concern,
Yeah.
Seems like too big a topic to just glance over. It seems to me like we're in for another work session.
How
just to
about,
make sure it's good.
I might not be here next week, but I will be here the week after.
Let's have another work session 2 weeks today.
You make those changes to it?
Yeah, I think so, the few that we talked
Attaboy.
about. I mean, I knew decommissioning was gonna be the big topic, I thought we'd get through some of this other stuff, we didn't even really get through most of it, so. But I think most of those things are things that hopefully aren't
They're
a
not.
big issue.
Yeah,
The distance obviously came up today, that was,
Well, a
we
big
thought we
issue,
were
there
good at,
was-
but we could
Sorry
make
about
those
that.
changes too.
That's where I thought we should have started.
I'm,
I'm not always right.
Well, we're
Don't bring
productive,
me
we
ass
talked
in the
about the topic through it, all the way through, so I think it was a good meeting. Wanna do another one, that's fine.
I like the idea of you talking about a public hearing. When you get a final draft, or, after your next work session, you have a draft, then it's still in draft form. You're not proposing, you wanna hear from the public about the draft. And I'm going to one of those tomorrow night in Buchanan County. They have a draft wind ordinance or an update to it, and they have just a public meeting. And public can then comment on it, And then the board can then at some point say, okay, we are going to update this ordinance, and they have the, 3 votes, the public hearing, the 3 votes, like you have to do, so.
So that's separate from the 3-vote procedure?
Yes, yes.
Well, it would have to be a
And
hearing if we
that's what
vote
I'm
on it.
saying,
Right.
we
It
don't-
would have to be a public.
So
We
it's just
don't
a
have
it's
to
an
do
informational
that.
meeting.
But it's
And
not
you-
gonna-
Would this be
more of
on
a
a
separate
a
meeting,
separate time outside of the regular
I don't know,
meeting?
Community
Okay.
meeting or something.
And incidentally, I know there's somebody that's looking in the northern part of the county would like to put up a Met Tower. And I know that's addressed in here. Should I tell him Cooley's Jets for,
What's that?
should I tell him Cooley's Jets for a few weeks?
That's up to you.
Well, maybe-
Or he can just go
That's-
do it if he really
That's what I'm
wants. I
saying.
guess.
Well, there's no
People
zoning
can do
now.
whatever they want right now.
I mean, yeah, right now you can just go do
This
it.
law is out there, that's why I'm saying, we already have a public hearing built into the process. We can amend it, so to say we're gonna have a draft work session, public hearing, and then start the process. Why, it's already built into the process, it's just delays. That's what I'm saying.
Letting them put up a Met Tower, that's no agreement, is it?
What's that?
If they put up a Met Tower, that doesn't signify any agreement, because there's no
No,
zoning
but
right there.
that's essentially a step to prove that it's feasible to do.
Yeah, just so they can measure the wind, they put it up, it's just I think it's about 200 foot tall, and it's just got anemometers, or whatever you call them.
The main reason we put that in the ordinance is related to like crop dusters or just whatever.
Yep.
Any planes that'd be able to verify that that's there with some kinds of tape or markers on there.
Put a light on it,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
identified, and we're
'Cause
seeing a lot of.
those can be pretty spindly little things, they're hard to see.
Do they have to have FAA, I assume they have to have FAA approval for those?
Correct.
Depends on where it is.
It's dependent height too, right?
Yeah, I'm
Height,
not
height,
sure
its
what
location, but yeah.
what height triggers that, I don't know.
Yeah, if it was near the airport, in Part 77, it surfaces, it would fall under our airport zoning, but if
It's outside of that and it's not tall enough, yeah, then it doesn't matter.
Well, I'll just tell them, I said, well, we would like to have a draft ordinance maybe in a couple of weeks so we can advertise a public hearing. And right now, there's no zoning out there, so if they want to do that and they had FAA approval, that would be up to them. Or they can wait and see how what the draft proposal looks like. Right now, there's
I
no
mean,
zoning.
right now,
Does
he
that
could
sound
just go,
okay for you?
yeah, right now, he could just go do it if he wanted to.
I said they can go do that, there's nothing,
Good.
there's no zoning. They can do
Unless
what
they're
they
within
want.
the 2-mile zoning radius of Burlington, they can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, no, it's not the 2-mile zoning, it's the airport, Part 77 specifically.
Yeah, the FAA,
Well,
I don't,
can't remember what
even
this.
in the zoning, I don't know if we'd have
No,
something. that would be-
that's why we were handling this separately, because it would be countywide, and it wouldn't be affiliated with Zona, and for wind and solar, commercial scale, at least.
One of the good things about having that bond I can see is if you've got a bond, unless the bonding company's been with you a lot, they have a tendency to look very carefully. The first few I got
I would hope they look at all of
they
them
had title to
pretty
my
carefully.
house and everything, so that if I didn't finish the job, they were gonna leave me alone and in my underwear.
From the person I talked to, it sounds like they don't like to be in a losing position, so.
Well, and that's the point, they don't wanna take a risk.
Nobody wants to take.
Nobody wants to take a risk, and if you can put that off on anybody else, and like I said, I've bid on that a few times, if you can put that off to anybody else and tell them it's not a big deal, or there's no risk of that, and you buy that, that's okay. Then
I don't wanna belabor this, and we could, but there was just one quick question I had,
Okay.
see what you think about this, cause we put in here, I don't know, I gotta find it. We said a surety bond or another form of financial security deemed acceptable by the board, you just want it to be straight. Straight bond.
think of bond,
I don't know what other there
I don't,
would be other than
unless
putting a
they
bunch
wrote,
of money in
unless
an
they wrote a
account.
cashier's check, and you put it in the,
Bank.
That's the only other thing I
in the
really
bank,
thought of.
and let it sit there for 2.5 years, and say, if you don't get us another bond.
Yeah, then it's yours.
We're
it's, you know.
So that's kind of what, the only other thing I thought of is they put money in a bank account.
That would be the only thing I thought.
Is that acceptable
So if
or
it's
not?
But then that language gives you, the board, the.
And I can't imagine, because we aren't paying them interest on it, you know, that they would give us a check for $100 million.
I don't think so either, but we thought it gave more flexibility.
Well, maybe,
that
I don't know,
way,
what do you
so,
think,
I don't know.
Trent? I can't imagine anybody
Well,
doing that.
that's part of the beauty of an amount certain, so say if we say 2.5, 3.5, whatever it is, you know, 3.5 times over that estimate, then that's an amount certain. So if they wanna then put that aside, and that's part of how bonding companies work, often is they'll require, like you said, they're requiring a certain amount of collateral for what they're bonding. And what is it? Does somebody own a bunch of big buildings downtown? Do they own, I don't know, I mean, that's why you say, hey, they're gonna measure that risk, it's a financial transaction.
Yeah.
At that point, but I think raw numbers, amount certains help make financial transactions happen without litigation, because once we're.
So if there's a number on a sheet that said they have a bond for X number of dollars,
30 million or
you
whatever.
just point to that.
Yeah, we could point to that, and if
Say
if
get a
they
bond or
wanna
put
go
money
to
in
a
a bank
bonding
account or
company and say
whatever.
they have
I'd rather,
50%
But it's up
of
to
that
you guys then to say if it's
collateral,
okay.
I'd rather-
that bond's probably a lot less expensive for them.
Than giving us $100 million or whatever it might be to put in the
If that's
bank.
that full amount, yeah, sure.
you're not gonna get
But
anybody.
basically
We're not gonna give
gives-
them a discount amount rate.
But basically it gives the board the ability to choose what they're comfortable with.
Yeah, nobody's gonna give us
Okay.
that
So-
kind of money.
That's true. And
'Cause it
we would-
says
we would
for-
have to pick a bonding company we're comfortable with, if it's,
What's it
if
say
it's,
now?
if
Financial
it's,
security deemed
Joe's
acceptable to
bonding
the
company
board.
that went into business in March of 2023.
Yeah, yeah.
But either way, it said, and maybe, well, either way, I guess we'd leave in deemed, security, surety bond deemed acceptable to the board.
That's
But we
the-
put in another financial security just because it gives flexibility, I guess, but I don't know.
Yeah, and it would have to be acceptable to us.
But either way, whoever's in these chairs would say,
Yes or
okay,
no?
yes or no. No, we want this instead.
No.
I was just curious what you thought about that, but
I-
we thought it made sense to leave it more open-ended, but,
That's, I don't.
and then give you guys the ability to
If
decide.
somebody says, we'll write you a check for that, a cashier's check, and, at the end of, once, and then in 3.5 years, if it's up 20%, we'll write you a check for another 20%, you can give us the original one back, or we'll give you the additional to put in the bank. And, if they can do that, they got a hellish cash flow, bless their heart.
We'll live off that interest, that'll be all right.
Yeah, yeah.
We will not hold a check, it's going in the bank, right,
That's right.
It can't be
the same day that they write it to us.
That might be it too.
Yeah, don't post date it.
Yeah.
Don't forget to sign it.
Can I
Tell
date
us
this
the check's in there.
2025?
Yeah, we take this 10 years from now.
Yeah.
All right.
My grandma used to do that.
Leave the amount open and we'll fill in the
We'll
number.
fill it in.
We'll fill it in later.
We're having another meeting later today and we'll fill it in. Good idea.
Alright, well, let's, we can make some of these changes. If there's something else you see in here, let us know. I mean, I feel like we covered all the stuff that you had, that we talked about last time and that were in the stuff that you
Yeah.
prepared. It isn't in the exact form that you wrote it, but I think we covered it all. But if you see something that you think we
And
missed.
Jim, and we can change it backward. Are you comfortable with the distances I asked for?
Well, 2,500 foot's gonna pretty well limit them, you know, I wasn't thinking quite that far, you know, I was thinking 1,800, where they had 1,250, I was going up to 1,800, not 2,500.
Good, well, that's fine. I'm just,
That's
but
something
that
we
only,
can-
that really only applies, that's
That's true.
residences and civic.
Residents, yeah,
Civic, that's not property lines.
yeah.
I'm gonna be gone in 2 weeks, just will not be here, so. So it'll either be next week or the 6th.
You scouting for that?
I don't know whether I'll be here next week or not. We're
Yes, yes.
going to a wedding. I'm not sure what day it is, but it's
So what day did I just say? I don't remember now.
The 6th or next week, so we could do the 6th.
like you've been quiet. I haven't heard anything from you.
I've been working back here.
Yeah. Well, at least somebody's
Write
working.
down on the naughty thing
Somebody's
you keep
working.
saying, Tom.
All the what?
All the naughty words you keep saying.
Nonsense, yeah.
Where to put the boots in?
You know, I had to bribe my kid with McDonald's to not say those words sometimes. Do we need to bribe you with McDonald's too?
Coffee.
Fries, fries.
In Johnson County, we had a swear jar.
Yeah.
And anytime anybody in the room said anything, at least a
Yeah.
buck goes into the swear jar, right?
I'd be broke.
Well, we used it to buy the coffee.
All right, anything else?
So let's plan on June sixth, and then
June
if
6th.
something changes, you let me know.
We have some changes to distances, the height off the ground, some things on the decommissioning, the 6-month period prior to.
And I would like to
default.
see
The
my
times
surety
3.
bond, I would like to see some of my wording on that, and then where it's cleaned up, but I'm sure you've got a copy of that if I.
I went through it the other day, I thought we had pretty
Well,
much
maybe
everything
I
in
haven't
there,
gone
and
through
I
the
say,
whole
it's not
thing.
exact wording, but it's very close or very similar to, and if you want, I can try and pull it
Well,
out.
the
highlight
wording
where it's
isn't
at.
final, but the intent is.
I think we have the intent
Okay,
in here,
okay.
but I can pull it
I
out
will,
and
I will, I
highlight
will,
where
I
it's at
will, I
if you
will go
want.
through and check it off, that's fine.
Cause I did it the other day, I went through it and I noted, okay, this is here, this is here, this is, so it's not like in one spot, but it's this piece
Moved
is
around
section
so I
1,
couldn't
this
find it.
piece isn't, yes.
It's more condensed than
It's
it was
more about-
previously.
It's more about how it flows with the different pieces of the ordinance.
Okay.
Some fits in this piece better, and this, what you wrote here fits in decommissioning, this fits in
Well,
general provisions.
I just wrote down the perils as they occurred to me.
Mhm. Agreed. I figured you just got down there and just started, here's what I want, and this is what it's gonna say.
Yeah, yeah.
So we tried to take it
And
and
if,
put
and
it,
if there's anything there,
and that's
you
why I said,
think I
if you
missed
think
or
we missed
whatever that
something,
should be on there, just cause I thought, doesn't mean it's, I'll cover anything that
and that's where
should
we
be there.
added stuff about like
Yeah.
the impact to the roads for decommissioning
Yep.
too, not just up front.
I've
That was
got
one
words
thing
here.
that Jared picked up on, and that was a good one.
I've got all there, I've got the,
But I'll go through it, cause I have, it might be on my desk even still, where I made notes of where.
I've got to
each
cover
one of
the
those
damage
things
to the
are.
county road system during installation, operation, maintenance, repair, modification, or decommissioning.
I don't know if you had it in there, so.
Oh,
Okay. I'll just give it to Jared.
I have
Over
maintenance
here.
in there
You
too.
had it.
I've got maintenance in there.
Got maintenance in there for it.
Installation, operation, maintenance, repair, modification, or decommissioning.
How about tile lines?
I think, and don't they have utility lines that run underground?
Well, they bury a lot of utility lines.
That's, well, anyway, and the way this reads, as I recall, we told them to completely remove all the installation.
Yes.
Yeah. So
But
that
you know
was-
how they damage roads in construction and in decommissioning, but they also, these things are so
Oh,
heavy,
yeah.
they bring
Oh.
in the crane, right? And sometimes it crushes the tile lines and they have to,
Yeah.
you need to make sure that they've fixed any damage to
Yeah.
farm tile lines.
Yeah, there's a reference to other utility systems that
Yes.
are within the right of way, so
Yeah.
that's, yeah.
They make
That's in
cranes
the right of
specifically
way.
for those, for that
Might be talking
application.
about on the private property.
Expensive
so.
cranes.
I believe that's, there's this, it even calls that out too, if there's other areas.
Okay. That was a doozy.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else, gentlemen?
Trent, do you have a card on you?
So,